folks. Welcome back to HVAC Talk with Huff. I am Huff. It has been a while since my last video. I had to take a short hiatus for a little while. I took a position, a role with Rewire America as their contractor success manager, and I needed to take some time off from some other things that I was doing, including this, to just kind of get acclimated with that company and make sure I get settled in that role so I could, achieve the results which they hired me for, and then kind of get back into my normal routine. I've been bivocational for years. For the last 18 years, I've been a bivocational pastor. I pastor a small church here in West Virginia, and I also do HVAC. Spent 17 years doing tech support. Then the last year was doing consulting, and now I took a role with Rewire America because it's really in the lane that I want to be in. And secondly, as I didn't have to give up my consulting, obviously I had to slow way down. I have to fit it in around their schedule, but they still allow me to be able to do that and keep my licenses and stuff that I have. So it just kind of was a real fit. Because a contractor success manager role for RA, Rewire America, is about making sure that contractors understand and are able to perform and do their best work, specifically as it applies to Rewire America's projects. But part of the value prop of being involved with Rewire America for contractors is that they get top-notch training and that we help them. And that training will carry through all of their business, not just the projects they work on with Rewire America. Now, Rewire America is, and this is not a commercial for them, but they're centered in on the role is to help low to middle income families be able to get high efficiency heat pumps in their homes when they maybe otherwise would not be able to afford that or not have the tools necessary to be able to do that. And so they are able to provide different ways and different helps to be able to achieve that. And so it is a nonprofit organization, and so which also kind of really fits in my wheelhouse with what I do, outside of HVAC. And so I had started making an outline for this video before I took the role, and it kind of really fit. I was making notes along the way as I was kind of getting acclimated with Rewire, and today's topic is about quality, right? What constitutes quality? Now, I want you to just think for a moment, not about your company, not about anything else. I just want you to think about you for a moment, and I want you to think about if you were to do an install. You would just to install a new, like I have a York HVAC7, which is a horizontal discharge heat pump, 2-ton. If you were installing that system in a house today, you yourself, and when you got done and everything's said and done, you put the last screw in place and you've done your last bit of commissioning and all of that, and you got your little handkerchief and you wipe off the last little bit of dirt off the panel there, and nice shining bright, and you're walking away with a smile on your face because you know you did a good job. What does that job look like? And what do you consider to be quality? Right? When we look at quality, there are some documents we obviously need to refer to, such as installation instructions. Right? If you did not adhere to the clearances called out by that manufacturer for proper operation, is that quality? Right? If they say that you need to have a minimum of 12 inches from the wall, and you don't meet that minimum, is that considered quality? One has to ask themselves that. Of course, there's also local codes, state codes, things like that. Then we have some really cool documents and programs such as ACA's quality program, that goes into a little more detail. What about the actual commissioning of the equipment? The most important day of an equipment's life is its commissioning. How well was that done? Did you follow all the steps that need to be taken, all the proper readings, all the adjustments, to confirming airflow, all of that? So what does quality look like to you when you are done that job and you put your tools back in the truck and you're all done and you're satisfied? What does that look like? And so that's one thing to think about. But then the other thing is to say, okay, so now you're not the one doing the job. You're sending someone to go do the job. does that person that you're sending to do that job, do they see quality the same way you do? What is their version of quality? Do they not care about installation instructions? Do they start the equipment and don't really verify airflow, so therefore they don't know if the system is producing the right amount of BTUs? They don't do those calculations. They don't use things like Measure Quick or whatever it is you're doing to ensure that the job is done right. And so, does that person see things the way you do? And so, see, that's the difficult part of management. It's one thing for you to have an idea of what quality looks like. It's another thing is to reproduce that among other people for which you do not have the ability to be there every step of the way. And you are relying on them to carry out your instructions and do the job the way you yourself would want it done, because that's what we hire people to do. We hire people to do not shabby work. We hire people to do the work that we consider to be right and complete and quality. And how do we know that that's getting done? The first question is, do they know what the standard is? Do you have a standard? And so I actually took a couple of years ago, the National Association of Home Builders, NAHB, had a program that was a national quality, I think they called it NHQ, National Home Quality, something like that. What they did was they took principles from ISO 9000, which is a manufacturing quality program. It's like a third party that you present your quality manual and your checks and balances that are written in the manual and all these things. And you prove to them, there's a better word to use there, I'm sure, but I'm West Virginian and we don't always use big words. But you satisfy them that your way of checking quality meets their standard, ISO 9000. And so what they did is they took those principles and they applied it to the trades. All the trades, framing, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, the whole 9 yards. And so what we ended up doing as part of that program is we had to come back to our offices and say, okay, how do we install what it is that we install? Now, it doesn't mean that we had to, in our manual, write the clearance for every unit, things like that. There were certain things that we outlined, like we outlined how we wanted flex duct attached to the collar. We outlined how we wanted duct to be sealed. And what we did was we actually took our best guys and sat them down and said, look, we're writing a standard. And since you guys are the best at this particular, whatever it is that we were talking about at the time, we want you to help us write the standard. And we got the buy-in that way because, there's always folks that are complaining that so-and-so is making the same money they are, but they don't do work as good, right? We've all heard those complaints before. And so it really kind of took that away until they got the buy-in. Okay, well, they're going to make everybody do the same kind of work that I do, and I consider my work to be good, and so does the company. So it was a great buy-in by doing it that way. And but we ended up writing a standard. Now, when it came to the actual equipment portion, because again, this was kind of based on new construction, and we did new construction, but we applied it also to our AOR add-on replacement stuff. We applied it to everything we did. But when it came to the equipment, we couldn't write clearances for every outdoor unit that we installed, different brands and stuff. But what you can put in your manual is, you don't need to write out everything in detail, but it can be one of the things that we do here is that we consult the installation instructions on every install we do, and we make sure that all the clearances are met. We make sure that all the line set sizings are the correct diameter, that we don't exceed the lengths proposed by the installation instructions. We make sure the line sets don't run in a way that's inconsistent with the installation instructions. I mean, think about, the manufacturers do a great job of outlining how they want their equipment installed. And so just following the installation instructions to a T would be a step up for a lot of folks, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but we all know it's true. And so the thing is, if you were to hire somebody today to come into your company, how do you know when you send them to do their first install? Yes, they may ride with somebody and do an install or two with somebody else, but how are they, when you send them out and learn, how are you knowing that they're getting the job done correctly? How do they know what the standard is? Is it written down somewhere, or is it, like I said, you don't have to maybe have some big thick binder, but some kind of guidelines on how you want things done. And then the second part of a good quality process is, um, do you check up on it, right? Is there a process by which you make sure that the quality standards that you have set in place, is there a way for you to make sure that that was done correctly? Because that's what ISO 9000 is built on. It's built on, having a process, having a standard, and part of the process is making sure that the standard is known and then that the standard is checked, right? So it's not only making sure the standard is known for the people doing the work, but it's also following up behind them to make sure that the quality process and standards were followed, right? And so this is a way to achieve consistency. I've been out on way too many jobs where we get out there only for the mechanical contractor to be embarrassed. And I'm serious as a heart attack. I've been out on jobs where we walked out, the homeowners were complaining that the system wasn't working correctly, or the building owner. And we've been out there 3-4 times, and they're still not happy, and we've done everything correctly and all this stuff. And then we get out to the job, and there are just egregious mistakes made. Like, there's no way that you thought this was correct. And I've literally had business owners shake their head and apologize to me for asking me to come out, because they didn't realize that the installer had done this, or that the service guys behind them didn't catch it. And and they shook their head, and I felt bad for them. I've never chastised anybody about that. I've never jumped on them. I never added insult to injury. You don't take salt, rub it in a wound. But it just brings back to bear is like, okay, what does quality look like to you, especially if you're a service manager or a business owner? What does quality look like to you? And then how are you making sure that your thoughts and your ideas about quality, how you make sure they are extended to the field and followed through? That's what a quality program is about, a quality process. It's having a standard and then making sure that standard is followed, because it's then that you can achieve consistency. It's then that you can recreate and reproduce, if you will, the same results over and over. As when you have this process, it's there to ensure that that everything is followed the way it's supposed to be. And so, my challenge today is: do you have a quality process? If not, sit down with the managers in your business, or with your head people, lead people, whatever. I don't know how your business is structured, but it doesn't matter. Whoever your lead people are, sit down with them and say, what do we consider to be quality install? And while we may not be able to pinpoint everything, there are specific things that we want to pinpoint, and we want to make sure it's written that these instructions are followed, so that when they aren't, we can point back and say, we explained this to you, and that this is our standard. And so this is what we want followed. And if you're not going to follow them, then, maybe this is not the place for you to be. And then when you look at your quality process, also think about, the most important day of a piece of equipment is the day that it started, the commissioning, right? Starting equipment is turning it on. Commissioning is the word we need to be using, because commissioning is not just about making sure the equipment runs, but it's making sure that it runs as designed, as it's supposed to be, right? For heat and air conditioning system, airflow is paramount, right? We have to ensure that the airflow is set correctly and that the CFM is correct for the application. And so oftentimes, we try to get information from folks when they say they're having a problem. Okay, well, let me see we used to call them startup sheets. I try to say commissioning sheets now. I'm trying to make sure I correct my terminology. And we get information back where we got delta T's. I got entering and leaving dry bulb temperatures, and this is that, like, let's say it's air conditioning season. No wet bulb entering and leaving temperatures, no airflow. There's no way for us to know that the equipment was running correctly when they left there, because they simply did not take all the checks that they were supposed to, and if they did, they didn't document it. And to me, if you didn't document it, it ain't done, right? And so the first day of an HVAC system, the commissioning day, is the most important day, because when we commission properly, it means that we're leaving there ensuring longevity and reliability of that system. And if there is a breakdown a few months later, you're going to know very quickly whether it's the equipment or the install. And think about this: if you installed the HVAC system and 2 months later it breaks down, the first thing the homeowner is going to think is, "Well, we got a lemon." And all too often, the brand is actually, I can say this now because back when you're working for the brands, you try to walk a thin line there. But, you know, I just seen the brand blame way too much. Are there problems within brands? Absolutely. Do they make mistakes? They're built by people. You doggone right there's mistakes. But I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of job sites I've been to where there were problems, it was not quality issues on the equipment. It was typically install related. And more importantly, it was if the equipment was commissioned correctly, they probably would have caught the problem, especially airflow. I mean, airflow, airflow, airflow. We can't say it enough. Airflow. We should just say it all the time. Just walk around, high five each other. Airflow, airflow, because it's paramount. Well, if you got a ductless system, it's got the right airflow because, well, it's a ductless system. And there's not duct to contend with, and they're making sure that the right amount of air is going across those heads. They're designed to do that, right? But when we're talking about ducted systems, the equipment doesn't know the static pressure of the duct system that you installed it on. It doesn't know that. If it's a variable speed blower and you got a high static, it knows that it's working hard to do it because it's winding up really hard and sounding really rough. But it's just going to keep doing that until it gives up the ghost. And all too often the equipment's blamed. And the problem is that, okay, well, you sold that equipment to the end user. Blaming the equipment doesn't help you as much as you think it does, right? Because we've been having problems with them. Well, then why did you sell me that brand? I mean, think about that. Blaming the equipment doesn't really work that well at the end of the day, because there's been too many times that we've had to go out only to find the real problem, and then we have to try to walk that fine line where we don't completely throw a contractor under the bus and run over them. But at the same time, we got to kind of stand up for the brand. So it was always a rough thing to do, and I'm glad I don't have to do it anymore. And tip my hat to all the folks that do have to continue to do that. I got a lot of friends still in that line of work, and so it's important that we have a quality standard. It's important that we have a standard that includes how we commission the equipment. Now, listen, there ain't no mistake about it. Everybody knows I'm a Measure Quick fan. I was a Measure Quick fan from the very beginning when I met Jim, even before Measure Quick was started. I had met Jim, big fan of his, one of the brightest minds in the business, but he's created a platform that just ensures that not only if you walk through the guided workflows, not only do you commission equipment correctly, but it's documented. It's documented. And folks would send us, start and check sheets, and you could tell that they made the numbers up because we do the math. The math don't lie. Right? And I guess they didn't think we would, because I can tell you that me and the guys that worked for me, we always did the math before we sent it into the factory, because there's no way we were going to be embarrassed by that. And we'd be like, no, I'm not sending that in because that's not right. There's just no way these numbers are right. You need to go back out and do it right. And so, we need to have a quality standard. We need to have that standard documented. We need to have a checks and balances system that keeps people, knowing they're going to be checked after. It's amazing that people, when they know that there's going to be someone to check after them, they do the job a little differently. It's just the way it is, folks. I mean, I would hope that we're all adults and that we wouldn't have to have somebody watching over our shoulder. But the simple fact is, it just keeps an honest man honest. And so have a checks system to where even if you can't check every job, maybe you have a system where you check, a certain percentage just to make sure. And if you find inconsistencies in those ones that you do check, then you get a little more, you check a few more. So got to have a standard. The standard's got to be known by everybody who works for you. That standard must also include all the way through the commissioning, and it must be documented. If you're not going to use Measure Quick for its documentation, then find another way to do that, but make sure all the information that is needed is there, right? Not just dryball return and supply, but we need entering and leaving wet bulb and dry bulb. That way we can see truly what the enthalpy delta is across the coil. We need measured airflow, including not only just CFM, but also the static pressure. Because if you have a constant CFM, a blower motor, everybody else will call it a variable speed blower. If you have one of them where you dial into CFM and we know that it meets that CFM, that's one thing, but also measure that static. That way, if there is an issue later, you know what that is. Also document the filter that's in there. What type of filter is in there now? Because if you got a fiberglass 1-inch throwaway and everything's fine now, but then the homeowner goes to Home Depot or Lowe's and it comes back with a Merv 123 and, which is, akin to a block wall, and puts that into the filter slot, and now all heck breaks loose. And then you go back out there, okay, well, this is what we had here originally because this is what you said you wanted. Hopefully you offered a better filtration system and they decided they didn't want that and this is what they wanted. Okay, that's great, but now you're using filters that's above what we told you, and so that's why the system's not performing, right? So it has to be a complete commissioning along with documentation. And listen, we got smartphones now. There's no reason not to have pictures. Back when I was doing this work, we had Polaroids. We if there was a problem, we would go take Polaroids. Now, and then we finally stepped up to a digital camera before I had left the contracting world. We thought that was something that I could take pictures and upload them to a computer. Thought that was great. Now we got smartphones. And a lot of people are using electronic service tickets and you can just easily upload them right into the service ticket. So listen, there's no reason not to have all this information. So you've got to have a standard. It's got to be documented. It's got to have a checks and balance to make sure that you're checking against it so that the standard continually gets followed and is consistent, and needs to have proper commissioning with documentation. And I would document the whole job, right? I would take pictures, even things that may not seem, take pictures of the outdoor unit so you can show that it's nice and level and, all that when you started in case something happens later and they hit it with a lawnmower or something like that. Just document it. And so having a standard is so important, and starting the equipment correctly and commissioning it is so important. And, having a standard the standard enables you to take folks who maybe aren't as good as some others and bring them up to the right level, right? You're not taking good guys down. What you're doing is you're bringing folks, guys and gals, who maybe don't have as much time in the business and maybe don't quite understand why it's important to do things certain ways. And by having this standard and documenting it, you're helping bringing them up to the level of the good folks that you already have where their work is supreme. And then not only that, then if you bring in new people, you're able to get them up to speed very quickly. So it's work to do it this way. It's work to put that together, but I promise you, if you do it, you'll be glad you did. Have a quality process. Have a standard. Make sure it's documented. If you have questions about this, man, reach out to me. I'll be more than glad to talk to you about it. Be more than glad to help give you some information. Again, ACCA's quality program, you know what? A lot of that's already documented. They have that great program. Maybe that's something you might want to consider. I think there's a cost associated with it, but if you don't want to go through that process, then maybe sign on to that program, and work with them. Just got to have a standard. We've got, as an industry, we've got to do better. We got to reduce these callbacks, which are just needless. They're needless because it not only, you lose money when it happens, because you not only have to pay someone for non-billable hours, but you also lose out on work they could be doing for profit. But not only that, it's just our credibility, as a skilled trade is very important. And so we want to have the highest, utmost of integrity. And that can separate your business from a lot of other folks, right? So doing great work, making sure it's done right, and always delivering on what you promised the customer, well, that'll keep work flowing in your door. So hope this helps. Got any questions, reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.